Okay. I think that it's working. It's working. All right. Oop. So. Okay. There. Turn that off. And we go here. YouTube's being weird today. Interest. No, there was a little bit of muttering. It's YouTube changed some things around, and it's being a little wacky. But I think it's mostly fixed, at least on my end. So good morning, afternoon, or evening to you all. Here, it's a morning. It's a very sunny Sunday. I think it was last time where it was just crazy snowing. We got about 14 inches of snow in one day, and we were one of the lower numbers of lower amounts of snow. Just a little bit north of here where I work, they got 20 inches, and north of that in Green Bay, where the Green Bay Packers play, they got like 25 inches of snow in one day. So, but now it is going to be 60 degrees outside Fahrenheit, and there's snow here and there, like in strange kind of shadowy parts, like next to houses where there doesn't get a lot of sun sometimes. But otherwise, it's been lovely. Grass is starting to turn green. Birds are doing bird stuff. Squirrels are doing squirrel stuff. So there's that. So I guess that was, I'm hoping it was a fluke. I would prefer if we would not have another one of those in May. That'd be great. All right, so what have we got here? Australia signing in, Bristol, UK, Colorado, Columbus, Georgia. Mumbling initiated, yes, definitely some mumbling. Colorado Springs, New Jersey, Halifax, Nova Scotia. 25 inches. How do people even live in the U.S.? We got shovels and snowblowers and stuff like that, And I don't know. It's fine. Having that snow in mid-April, even for Wisconsinites, we were kind of like, all right, we're totally done with this. Could you stop it, please? But yeah, I don't know. I like having four different seasons, although some people will say there are 12 seasons, and a lot of them are construction. But anyway, let me see what else we got here. Singapore. VJ Morph says, how did your game of Shadespire go yesterday? I'm going to talk about that in a bit, but it was fun. It was a good time. Buenos Aires. Probably don't get a ton of snow there, I don't think. Philippines. What else have we got? Windsor, Ontario, and Quebec City, and Australia, and Texas. It's getting hot there. Newcastle, Long Island. No snow here. Good morning, all, says Bromos. Jakarta, Ontario, Topeka, Kansas, Southern California, Florida, Sacramento, Colchester. Probably pronouncing that incorrectly, I apologize. Milwaukee, Wisconsin, not too far away. Frankfurt, Portsmouth, UK, because I think there's also a Portsmouth. Well, there's a couple of different Portsmouths in the United States, I believe. Philly, Halifax, Surrey, Germany. Matthew Sears is saying hello from Little Wars, which is a convention, a mostly historical, but not completely historical, miniatures convention in the middle-ish, or someplace in Illinois. I know it's in Illinois. I think it's in Middle Illinois, but it might be further than that. Anyway, so he's poking in to say hi from there. We've got Ireland, Oregon, Columbus, Georgia, Phoenix, Glasgow, Nottingham. Let me see, what else have we got? Lancaster, Columbus, Georgia. Got a couple of Columbus, Georgias. Bangor, North Wales, as opposed to Bangor, Maine. Tampa, Florida, Ireland, Greece. Some guy says, and that's actually his name, says some guy, says, yep, there's a Portsmouth in the New Hampshire, New England, I think. Fernando says, I just want to say thanks for responding to my Facebook message. You're a great thing for the hobby. Keep it up. I'm the guy that is fully sculpting his Tyranid army. Oh yeah, no, that was cool. I am terrible at sculpting, so I appreciate when you're doing good work there. Jason Stevenson says, hello from Appleton. Hello. What else have we got? Liam asks, did you see the new Ideneth Deepkin? I don't know if I saw the stuff that was there stuff that came out yesterday, or was there stuff that was announced yesterday? GW sent me some wet elves, which I talked about a little bit on the Patreon show last week Saturday. But hopefully these will. So I've got some Namarti Thralls, which are nice looking models. Don't get me wrong; they're very technologically well done, very well sculpted, and all that stuff. And then also got Volturnos, which sounds a little bit like a Pokemon. Volturnos, High King of the Deep. That part doesn't sound like a Pokemon at all. He's riding what looks to be a unicorn seahorse or something. He's certainly not a fisherman, sadly. But yeah, so I got those and I've been looking at them a little bit, and they sent me the Battle Tome. So I've been kind of thumbing through that a little bit as well. But I know that they were announcing some new stuff or showing off some new stuff, and I haven't seen the newest stuff. So yeah. Greetings from Columbus, Ohio, says DJ Todd P. Harris. Greetings. I will be traveling to Columbus, Ohio, for Origins, which is a big gaming convention, kind of like Gen Con, but only about a third the size, from what I understand. It's only about 20,000 people, which, when you say only 20,000 people, makes you sound like a dickweed, but it is in comparison to 60-plus thousand Gen Con. It is smaller, which is actually, I think, kind of nice. I'm looking forward to it. I haven't been to Columbus at all since 1995, which is the last time I was at Origins. So it's considerably different from what I understand. So I'm looking forward to that. That's in mid-June. I think it's maybe the week after TMX. Something like that. So yeah, going to... Looking forward to going to that, and I have not, like I said, I haven't been to Origins or Columbus in years, so it'll be fun to check that out. Poppy Appletree says, when did GW start sending you stuff anyway? On and off, they do. Like, when a new codex comes out, like a new, there's plenty of channels that are very, very into strategy, and they do a lot of bat reps and things like that. Tabletop tactics, mini wargaming, others that I can't think of off the top of my head. But when a new codex comes out for 40K, they get it like a week ahead of time, and then they do reviews of it and stuff like that. GW doesn't send me that stuff because they know, and I've told them, I'm not strategically minded specifically, so I could be like, well, this has got cool pictures, and the type font I like, that's basically about it. So, yeah. They send me some stuff, like they sent me Shadespire early so I could talk about it, because I knew it was coming, because the new GW likes to tell you when things are coming as opposed to just like the week before. So I had some conversations with Eddie from the community team, and so they worked to get me a copy early, and I painted it up as soon as I could and talked about it early and took it with me to Valhalla last year. And they sent me Necromunda early. They did send me the 8th edition starter box early. And hopefully they're going to be able to send me Kill Team early when it comes. The games that are, I think, aimed a little bit more towards my my subject matter, my demographic, which is trying to get people into the hobby, that kind of stuff, that stuff gets sent. This was new. Like, this was kind of like this wasn't me reaching out to them and saying, hey, I know this thing's coming. If you're interested, please send me a copy or whatever, and I'll talk about it. This was more of a, I got an email that said, and I was one of many, I think, in the email, and it was like, hey, we're sending this stuff out, and just to let you know. But mine took and it was coming from Memphis, Tennessee, not from England. It was coming from the United States offices. But I think it got lost in the mail or something, because it took 8 or 9 days to get to me. So I was I started seeing people talking about it online, like other channels, and I was like, oh, I thought I was getting one. They sent me an email and said I was, but I'm like, whatever. I mean, I didn't have a tracking number or anything. And then all of a sudden one day it showed up, and I was like, oh, okay. But anyway, I think it was actually maybe the day after it was actually released, so whatever. But yeah, so I'm trying to figure out, I think I may, like I said, I've talked a little bit about it here and there. I don't know if I'm going to try to use them to maybe paint something, or maybe it'll become a door prize at TMX. Hard to say. Anyway, that's kind of where that's at. VJ Morph says, like Adam, I am not keen on the moist elves. I prefer wet elves, but, moist elves is also good. But I would consider getting the shark just so I can mount a frickin' laser on its head. Well, sure, I can understand that. That makes sense. Iron Fang says, working on my backlog. Goliath Gangers today. Cool. Lord and Losser. Ooh, that sounds official. My first time catching the show live. Just wanted to say thank you for getting me into the hobby, painting up my new AdMech army as I watch. Cool. I'm also slowly kind of collecting some AdMech, which will become a new detachment to my Space Marines eventually. So I'm looking forward to that as well. What else here? DJ Todd P. Harris says, is the cello on vacation? Actually, it's just kind of out of frame over there. You can't really see it. It just hasn't been moved back into its normal spot because my wife has had a bunch of gigs lately. So once that calms down, then it will probably go back in its normal spot, and then the eyes will come back on, and the whole deal. It'll be great. Poppy Appletree asks, is that the same Eddie who used to do their Facebook stuff? I think so. I believe so. Now it's the Eddie that you see on Twitch a lot when they're doing, like, at conventions and stuff. There's usually two people. Like, I think during most of Adepticon, the commentators were Eddie and Martin, I think. But yeah, he's a really nice guy. Let me see here. Mr. Dorv says, I'm excited for Kill Team since I'm taking forever to paint my Dark Imperium box. I should be able to play a game of Kill Team while I'm continuing my projects. That's, I think, one of the big benefits of skirmish games is that, like yesterday, like I said, it was International Tabletop Day, and a bunch of us got together at a local shop and we're playing Shadespire. And it was just really nice. Like, I'm really looking forward to painting my orc warband because it's just 4 orcs. It's not 100 orcs, you know what I mean? So I've never really painted orcs before, so I'll be able to paint just 4, which will be cool, and then I won't have to be staring down the barrel of another 96 orcs or whatever, so that's cool. Taka says, have you had the opportunity to try the new Star Wars Legion game from Fantasy Flight? The same people that made X-Wing. I have not. Well, I mean, I've watched, when they were announced it at Gen Con last year, I watched several demos, but I did not actually play the demos. I just watched them. I've also watched some bat reps online by somebody, I forget who. My plan is that at some point yesterday during the International Tabletop Day, we were at the local game store. One of the employees was going to run me through a quick demo of their demo copy of Legion. But we ended up playing a big 4-player game of Shadespire, and it took a bit longer, so that didn't happen. So yeah, it's I'm hoping to get a chance to play it. It's probably not something I'm going to get into, but yeah, it's I would like to just try to play it just so I've got the experience and can talk a little bit more about it directly. Adventures of a Wizard says, first time catching this live. I'm painting 3 Blood Crushers today. Cool. Glad to hear it. I eventually would like to do a little bit of Blood Crushers myself. Good morning from Morgantown, West Virginia. Thanks for streaming Shadespire yesterday. Yeah, it didn't work as well as I would have liked. So I have an iPhone, and the iPhone doesn't have the microphone jack. It's just got the one little doohickey there, and so it's very well, it's impossible without a third-party adapter to be able to plug in a microphone and also a cord to power, And so I had been streaming on Facebook a little bit for a while just to try that out, and then was like, well, but I was doing it on the Game 4 page because really it was a bunch of us from Game 4 who were down at the store. So I posted it on the Game 4 Facebook page. And then I was like, okay, that's cool. Now I'm going to do something on YouTube through Tabletop Minions. We'll get more views and people will be able to check stuff out. So then I started doing that for, 15 minutes or whatever. And then all of a sudden, like just as the game was almost about to start, then it's just like, oh, hey, low battery warning. So I was like, when I came home last night, I did buy on Amazon an adapter, which you plug in and then you can plug in a microphone/headphone or a regular like lightning plug, so I could attach a battery to it, or I could plug it into the wall if necessary. So in the future, hopefully, I'll be able to stream better That particular game shop is my local game shop that I like to go to, and they just recently finally got better internet, and so I've got Wi-Fi access that's about equal to what I've got here at home. So I would like to do a little bit more streaming. The noise issue can be a problem because the place is kind of small, but yeah. So eventually, I'd like to do a little bit more live streaming, maybe from the game shop once in a while. But we'll see. That was a little bit of a test run, and sort of failed with the battery issue, but that's basically about it. Daniel says, I'm back after a 25-year break from the hobby. You've really motivated me to get back into it, and I've pulled a shoebox full of Ral Partha miniatures out of the closet to practice on, going to try Age of Sigmar. That's a good way to do it. I think that if you're getting into the hobby or you're getting back into the hobby, if the first thing you do is like the really super cool, intricate, neat model that you really want to try out, and that's your first ever putting paint to brush, you may want to practice on some other stuff sometimes, and that's a good idea. I think you're making the right step there. What else have we got? Anton says, I want the two new war bands just for the cards. Some really good ones. I have the two new war bands somewhere. I haven't looked at their cards yet. I want the Kilgores or Magors, Fiends, or whatever. Basically the Blood Crushers, the big heavy armored Khorne guys, just because they're super cool and they have a dog. So I just like the look. There's really good sculpts. I'm looking forward to painting them. So yeah, definitely. Jean-Pierre says, how can I get a Game Force shirt? We don't have them for sale, but we've been kicking around the idea of making a store, like an online store, probably much like, let's see how I do a segue here, much like the Tabletop Minions merch bunker store. So you'd be able to, if you'd like to, purchase a shirt, and that kind of stuff, and go that way. But if you'd like to help support this channel and buy a fun shirt for covering your nakedness and also, displaying your sense of humor, allegiance, words, whatever, there's shirts and things like that available at bit.ly, so it's bit.ly/merchbunker. So yeah, but we've actually talked a little bit about, Jean-Pierre, about doing some shirts for Game 4. I mean, like, we have shirts that we wear to like conventions and stuff like that, but we have been talking about doing that. So that's one vote now so far for Game 4 shirts. So I appreciate it. Good morning from Brooklyn, says 12 Neef. How you doing? What else have we got? Sam Hinchy says, I already bought and assembled and primed a Idoneth Deepkin. I think I'm saying it wrong. Idoneth? Anyway, Deepkin model. Water elves are awesome. Well, that's cool. I'm not one of those people who says that my opinion is right. I'm just saying I wish it was really hoping for crazy fish people, and wet elves was not my jam, but I know a lot of people are enjoying it, so I'm glad they made them. And like I said, technically and artistically, I think they're very, very well done. They're not necessarily my aesthetic because they're elves, but they're pretty cool. Let me see here. Frankie Lee Bailey says, the Blood for the Blood God t-shirt went over really well at the Phantoms hockey game last night. Everyone loved it. Oh, well, good. I'm glad that's good. VJ Morph says, hey, Adam, so the new airbrush is getting started this week. Any rule of thumb when it comes to thinning GW paints for airbrush? 1 to 2 or 2 to 1 thinner paint ratio? There's no good hard and fast thinner to paint ratio rule, because even within a single paint line, different colors can be different thicknesses. Sometimes different batches of the exact same color might be different thicknesses. Your main thing is you're trying to get the consistency to act like skim milk. They say that all the time when you hear people talking about, you're going to shoot this paint through your airbrush, you want it to be like skim milk, not half and half, not probably not even 2%, but skim, like fat-free milk. It's not watery, but it's also not thicker than that either. So it's in between. So yeah, generally you try to get it to be like skim milk, and then that should generally work. If it's drying out on your tip of your airbrush a lot, Sometimes more thinner can help, but not always. I know that when I shoot Vallejo black primer through my airbrush, it works great. Vallejo white primer through my airbrush has a tendency to clog a little bit more, so I have to clear it a little bit more. But that's just part of the white pigment is evidently just generally larger than most other colors, and so it just is, you're going to clog a little bit more with white. There's probably other ways to help mitigate that. I don't know if Flow Aid would help that, but yeah, definitely look into that and understand that when you're mixing your paints, like you said, you're trying to aim for like the consistency of skim milk. So, yeah. Terracotta 9 says Gloomhaven has put my 40K on the back burner. Great game, but tough miniatures to paint. Harder plastics, so not very clear detail. Yeah, like I said a couple shows back, I won a copy of Gloomhaven last year, like in May, at an event, and I never did open it, and instead I sold it to a friend of mine at work, and because he's more of a board gamer, but he's also getting into miniatures, and so yeah, I don't know if he's planning on painting them all or not, but I know he's been playing Gloomhaven and enjoying it. But I don't know a ton about the miniatures, but I can understand why they wouldn't be maybe as high detail, especially if you don't have to put them together. I don't know if you have to put them together or not. A lot of times models that are already put together sometimes just don't have quite as high detail because it just makes the molding process easier for making it like a one-piece model. So yeah, whereas like stuff like this chucklehead here, this is the first of my Storm Fiends that I'm working on. Yeah, that's hard to make a one piece. You know what I mean? That's like nearly 30 pieces. This guy, like every last little, like these weird little things on his shoulders and up his head, and he's got strange crystals coming off of his, I guess, nipples. I don't know. Every one of those things is an extra piece. Like his arm, each of the arms is like 6 pieces. So it takes a while, but it makes a very detailed and I think more interesting and a higher detailed model. Tyler says, Adam, I'm starting a Night Lord's army. I love the way I love the way the 30K Marines look. Can I use those for Chaos Space Marines in 40K? I would say yes. And here's why, just thematically. The concept is back in the days of 30K, that's when the split happened, the whatever, there was the Horus Heresy. So the thing is that they tell you that frequently a lot of the Chaos Space Marines that you see in 40K are actually holdovers from back in the days of 30K because they've become demonically possessed or whatever and all that kind of stuff that now they've been living for the last 10,000 years. So you can easily take old pieces of armor, old styles of armor, 30K style armor, and mix it in with your Chaos Space Marine guys. It would probably be a good idea to add some embellishment, add some spikes, add some mutation. I mean, with Night Lords, I don't remember which of the 4 Chaos gods that they're. Obviously, it's not Nurgle, and it's probably not Chaos, Khorne. But yeah, you would probably want to embellish and tweak, but you could also use old pieces. I like using old pieces, like 30K style, like every once in a while in a Space Marine, I'll just give them like old shoulder pads, because then it's almost like, that was a trophy that he was given relic shoulder pads from 10,000 years ago because he did a special thing or whatever, at the battle of such and such. So there's no reason you can't mix those pieces in. I think it just gives more character to the army. Obviously, like, you can't mix 30K pieces with like Primaris guys because the scale is not right. Maybe heads you can. I think you can maybe with heads, but the rest of their bodies, like shoulder pads, I guess you technically can as well. But the rest of them, you can't, Like if you had a Primaris torso but you had like normal guy legs, that would look weird. So don't do that. Let me see here. Ron Scott says hello from Madison, Wisconsin. Hi there. What else have we got? Fernando says, question, I'm getting addicted to make a wet blood effect with bright varnish and shades of red. Any tip to not fall into those techniques and have more variation without losing a theme in your army? Yeah, I mean, when you come up with like a special effect, like if it's a blood splatter or if it's like a weird like Nurgle effect or something like that, you don't want to do it to every model. I think you want to pick and choose. Maybe if the pose really like calls for it, like if there's like a normal, like he's a guy with a bolter, that's one thing. But if he's a guy with like double chain axes or something or whatever, and he's in a dynamic pose, that guy's probably going to be covered in blood. Whereas the guy with a gun, maybe not so much. So yeah, I would take a look at it that way. I wouldn't generally try to like overdo fancy techniques sometimes. Also because it helps to it just slows you down when you're going through stuff. So yeah. Exiwan, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right, says, so beginner here, I've heard GW's paints, brushes, and all of those things are pretty much overpriced stuff. Any suggestions for decent sets of paints, brushes? I mean, I like GW brushes for the most part. I mean, they have an Artificer line, which is very expensive. I think I know that I was looking at the store, and then one of the Artificer brushes was like $25. I don't ever generally buy super expensive brushes, and it's interesting too. I was talking to Sam about it. He paints 90% of his models with brushes that he gets from the craft store that are, I think, 6 brushes for $5. So it's just the very fancy detail stuff that he does at the end where he uses expensive like Winsor & Newton Series 7 type brushes. But for the majority of the paint job, 90%, he said, of the paint job on like his huge diorama that he took to the Crystal Brush, 90% of that was painted with brushes that you get at like Hobby Lobby or Michael's or possibly even a grocery store, where they're 5 brushes for $6 or 6 brushes for $5 or something like that. So really, really good brushes aren't a necessity. If you're going to start getting into freehand and doing really fancy stuff like that, then you generally want a really good brush because you need to have complete control over the brush when you're trying to paint a skull on a little tiny banner that's like, a couple inches high. That's a different story. But if you're just basically trying to paint, he says he does the majority of it with really inexpensive brushes, and then he can beat the heck out of them and then just get more, and it's fine. So, yeah, don't think that, I can get started painting as soon as I really, invest a whole bunch of money in brushes. Especially when you start, you're going to probably do it wrong somewhat anyway, so definitely look at some of the less expensive brushes. As far as paints, I use all kinds of stuff. I use GW stuff, I use Vallejo stuff, I use Army Painter stuff, I use washes from Secret Weapon, I use washes from Army Painter, I use washes from GW. Technically, the Secret Weapon ones are glazes, but, it's horse piece. Yeah, I would just, start messing with some stuff that you like. Maybe borrow some stuff from friends. It's also depending on what you can find locally. I mean, you can get most anything online, but sometimes you're like, it's late on Saturday night and you're trying to paint and you need more metallic silver. And if there's no place around you that you've scouted out to be able to get it from, you're going to have to wait until you get it from, wherever you buy it online. So I think it's always a good idea to know about your local stores that way. and be able to figure out what kind of paints that I use a lot of Vallejos because I can get Vallejos, not the airbrush ones, but the regular ones. I can get those locally very easily. So that's, but I can also get the GW ones very easily too. So it depends on what you mean. With metallics, I don't use GW as much, although I still use GW metallics for highlighting and dry brushing because they're a little bit pastier, so they work better for dry brushing. But for coverage, I generally go with Vallejo generally Vallejo. Anyway, let me see. Are Hobby Lobby the really controversial ones? I'm from the UK. We don't have that here. Is Hobby Lobby the company? Yeah, kind of. I mean, it is it's a chain nationwide, and they are privately owned, I believe, and they've got their own ideas about all kinds of health-related things and whatnot, and that's a whole thing. But there's also Hobby Town, which I don't think has that kind of thing. Where else have I seen those brushes? I know I just saw those brushes someplace else. Oh, I think it was at one of the local game stores. I think they must have been getting them from the same manufacturer, from the same distributor. Probably not the same distributor, but I know I've seen those same brushes that he gets at the. But any craft store like Michael's, I think in the United States, I don't know what kind of craft stores you guys have got overseas, but I would look at just trying to find the right size and shape, like whatever's going to work for you. And that's the thing too, is that it just because everybody else uses this brush doesn't mean that you can't use something different. There's a really great painter named James Wapple who uses paintbrushes that, by all rights, no one should use for miniature painting. He uses, there's like this rounded tip, and I can't think of the name of it off the top of my head, but it's a type of brush that's got a rounded tip, does not come to a point, and it's not for this kind of thing, but it's what he learned to do, and he's amazing at it. So there's no reason when someone tells you no, you can't use that stuff, you can't do that, just well, if you get the process, if your finished product is what you want, then you can do that. That's the way it works. Sometimes people will say, yeah, but it would be easier if you did it this way, and maybe it'll be easier for them, but maybe it wouldn't be easier for you. Totally depends. Maybe they're right sometimes too. Maybe you're using this kind of brush, and if you use this brush, it would go faster, or you'd have more control. So don't completely just be like, well, this is the way I do it, and discount everybody's ideas out of hand. But like if you're concerned, if you're thinking, well, maybe I'm not doing it right, and you ask some people, then if they give you some stuff, try it. But if you see someone who's using a brush that you don't use, don't walk up to them and be like, hey, you're not supposed to do that. Nobody likes advice that they didn't ask for. You know what I mean? Generally. So JP Got Rocket says, did everyone have a good International Tabletop Day yesterday? Well, I hope they did. I hope you did. So International Tabletop Day was started back like in 2012, I think, I believe by Geek and Sundry, which was a website / YouTube channel. It was partially started initially by Felicia Day and a bunch of other people. I think it was initially funded by Google, actually, when they were trying to get more people into the more, like kind of big pro sort of channels into YouTube. I think now they're Geek and Sundry is owned by Legendary. Anyway, so International Tabletop Day is once a year, usually in late April, from what I understand, and it is a time for people just to, it's almost like a celebration. Stores can get special packages. It's kind of like Free Comic Book Day, which is next week. Gesundheit. It's like Free Comic Book Day, which is coming up next week, and so the comic book stores can get these comics from the distributor, which they pay for, but they pay a cheaper price, and it's a big promotional thing. This is sort of along the same lines, but it's just basically like a fun day for people to get together and to play games and whatever, tabletop games. So we, at the Game 4 offices, we thought, well, we'll get together, because we've been playing Shadespire a bunch lately, we'll get together at our local game store, and we'll tell people in the Game 4 app to show up and that kind of stuff. So we did have several people show up who had never even been to that store before and hadn't played. There was a guy named Josh who has not ever really played before any kind of games, any kind of tabletop games like this, but he's been painting Skaven for about 5 years, and he brought some of his Skaven to show off, and they were really cool. He's doing really good work, and he's interested in getting Age of Sigmar as well, and so we're probably going to play some Age of Sigmar in the future as well, because we met up through the app and all that stuff through Game 4. So yeah, we, like I said, if you go back to the video that I posted yesterday, there was a little bit of live streaming going on at the store. We had a couple different games of Shadespire going on, and we also had, like at one point, there was a 2-player game. We did another 2-player game, and then we ran a 4-player game, which I've never played in a 4-player game of Shadespire, but it was fun. There was another 2-player game going on over here. In the back, there were 2 different games of 40K going on, and then there was, I think, some Magic going on in the store, and Yu-Gi-Oh! Maybe? And then I think there was a Destiny thing later on in the evening, but I'd left by that point. Star Wars Destiny. So anyway, yeah, it was a good time. I liked it. We had a feature that we put into Game 4 that if you posted an event that was going to happen on the 28th, an extra little pop-up would come down and say, hey, is this an International Tabletop Day event? And if you clicked on that and said yes, then in the listing of the different stuff near you, it would show kind of a special call out that, hey, this is an ITTD event. And you could find out more about what ITTD is. There's a little thing that would pop up if you clicked on the thing, and there's the whole stuff. So it was pretty cool. Yeah, but it's not just for wargaming. It's for all kinds of tabletop gaming. It's for board gaming. It's for CCGs, RPGs, whatever. But yeah, it was a lot of fun. So I hope that we're planning on doing it again next year, and I think it's going to be fun. I'm looking forward to it. We're going to try to see if we can't help to grow it a little bit more. It's been, like I said, it's been going on I want to say since 2012. It's maybe flattened out a little bit, and we're hoping to maybe kind of give it a bit of a goose. Maybe that's the wrong type of term. But yeah. Ming Lord says, yeah, saw Adam's vid on Kill Team box set. Looking for it on eBay. So that was a video about the old Kill Team, which was for 7th edition. That box set was like, you got some Space Marines, you got some Tau, you got a small, like softcover version of the 7th edition rule book, and then you got some extra, I don't know, like instructions and stuff like that. From what we've been told, the new Kill Team that's coming out soon is not based off of 8th edition. It's not a game where you need to have your 8th edition book and then you can play Kill Team. It's its own kind of standalone game. Now, from what we also understand, it's not like a 40K version of Shadespire, because it's not like Shadespire is A, played on like a hex board, and B, you buy these boxes that are the war bands, and they're a special thing. You're using, from what we can tell, normal 40K models. But you're using a different rule set. So it'll be interesting to see how that's going to work out, but I'm looking forward to it, because I would like to know, because I think that it's just another skirmish entry level kind of into the hobby is always cool, and so we'll see how that goes. Oh, what else have we got here? Esther says, I found someone 22 miles away on Game 4 who messaged me. Hopefully I'm able to get games together with him. Closest person in wargaming I've met so far. Well, that's not too bad. I mean, 22 miles, I drive that every day to work. So that's not too bad at all. I mean, different parts of the country, different parts of the world, it's a longer trip, obviously. But yeah, that's kind of the if you're not able to find local events being held in stores and things like that near you, then the looking for players section, where you're saying, hey, I'm looking to play this type of game or that type of game, and all that kind of stuff, the more information you can put into the description, and you're looking for players listing, like, oh, I work second shift, so I'm not available from this time to this time, or I've usually got weekends free, or Sundays aren't good for me, or whatever. That kind of information can really help, and then people will reach out to you. And now that when we first launched, we didn't have notifications, so you didn't know if somebody was trying to send you a message, and now we've switched that. There are notifications. You have to go into settings and preferences and turn them on in the app, but then you'll get a little message that will pop up and say, hey, someone has sent you a message, and then you can go into the app and look, and then it's just an easier way to kind of remind you that someone sent you a message. You don't have to go back and look all the time. So Frankie Lee Bailey asks, can we get a shameless TMX plug? Sure. I don't think I do. Right, wait, hang on, right here. There we go. I have to put my face down here because you can't see the logo. I got to fix that in the graphic. But yeah, TMX, I got to put something. Okay, how about that? So TMX is coming up June 9th and 10th, 2018, here in Oshkosh, Wisconsin, at the university. And if you want to go to www.tabletopminions.org/TMX, you can find out more about it. I've got to add some events to the website probably today still, and I'll be talking about it again some more. It's a small little convention. It's not a big thing, but it's a place where people can come and basically play. Like, game masters are going to be running demo style games, all war games. So it'll be maybe games you haven't played before, maybe games that they like but you don't know much about. I know that there's going to be some Drop Zone Commander and some Drop Fleet Commander, the two. And I know there's also going to be some Gaslands. So looking forward to putting those into the thing and getting some more in there as well. I've been told that Wreck Age is coming, so moderator Matt will be there with the Wreck Age stuff. And I think that also Gaddis Gaming is planning on being there. with Shattered Crown and that kind of stuff. So, yeah, definitely, if you get a chance, take a look at the website, and I'll be adding more stuff to it, like I said, this weekend, and we'll go from there. But that's the upcoming convention in just a little over a month. Let me see here. Ron Scott says, played my first Warhammer game on International Tabletop Day. It was 25 power level, introductory game at the Warhammer store in Fitchburg, Wisconsin. Fitchburg. Oh, yeah, by Madison. Right. Yeah. Yeah, we don't have a lot of Warhammer stores here in Wisconsin. There's I think 3, maybe? It would be nice if there was one up a little bit closer by me, but most of them in the southern part of the state. But that's good to hear. That's cool. Pit Starter says, question about Game 4. When will clubs be able to add events using their venue? Can still only use shops as a venue as far as I can see. That update is coming in the big 3.0 release, which will be coming in the next 2 to 3 weeks, I believe. So, yeah, at that point, what'll happen is that game clubs will be able to, let's say that the game club plays at a local restaurant, or they play it at like a library or something like that. They'll be able to put that information. They'll be able to basically apply and say, hey, look, this is the location we play at. We want to put it into our list of okayed locations. And then we at Game 4 will quickly do like a Google search to make sure that it's an actual place and not someone's garage. And then we'll say, yep. And then it'll be in there. So then whenever a group says, hey, we're having an event at such and such, library, community room or whatever, it'll just be in their list of places. If they still want to have stuff at stores, they can, but they'll have it in there. So it'll be coming in the next, like I said, the next big release, which should be, because we'll probably do some other small fixie releases between now and then. But that part is in progress now. Actually, we were just working on Friday. I was just laying out some new screens for the group's stuff. So yeah, it'll be part of that. Looks like Jason Stevenson is also answering some of those questions. Jason and I work at Game 4. And he's here in the chat, probably painting some miniatures while we're what was he? He was running. Oh, he has skeletons. If you look in, wait, hang on, right here, there. That right there, you can't see my mouse moving, but the skeleton over on the left side of the screen there, that is one of Jason's that he had finished up just in time for our game yesterday. Those two Stormcast, those are mine. Those are my quick paints that I did just before, or like right when I got the game last year. I'm kind of hoping to do some slightly nicer ones next time. I'm like I don't know if I'm going to just go on eBay and try to find new models so I can do that. I don't want to strip these guys because it'll be, I don't know. But I would like to do some slightly nicer paint jobs on these, but they're fun. But yeah, these are that's one of Jason's skeletons. It's a skeleton butt there. That's the harvester because he's got a scythe. Anyway, what else have we got here? Poppy Apple Tree says, oh, I've been trying out an ice effect for bases, but I couldn't get my crackle paints to crackle. Is it temperature thing that makes them work? With crackle paints, it seems to be the thickness of the paint. The more paint that you put there, and then the longer you let it dry, the more crackle you get. If you put down like a really thin coat of crackle paint, it seems to not crackle very much. But if you put down like a really goopy, thick layer, as it dries, that causes the crackle to be more crackly. I don't know. But yeah, it is definitely, I've noticed, at least with the GW ones, it's all about thickness. If you put down a real thin coat, sometimes it doesn't crackle at all, or it gives little tiny ones. But if you want some sort of real chunky, kind of big, flaky crackles, it's generally you need to throw on a big glob of the paint, which will look like goofy when you do it. But once it dries, it will flatten, and then also all the little pieces will crackle and stuff. So yeah, I don't think that it has anything to do with temperature. I'm not 100% sure on that. It could be maybe humidity. That I would look into, maybe do some research. I've just known from my personal experience, if I really goop it on there thick, then I get way better results than if I put it on thin. Let's see here. John Jay says, in response to Brian Black, who said it was difficult to get stores on board a little bit with Game 4. John Jay says, it's all about educating them, in my opinion. One of my local shops didn't respond too quickly either until I showed them the Nerdarchy interview with Uncle Adam. Yeah, Nerdarchy. I was on the Nerdarchy show, not this last Friday, but the Friday before. And then last week, we had a really good week for media coverage. We had an article that Geek and Sundry wrote about us that went live on Tuesday last week, and then on Thursday, I think it was Thursday, yeah, we had an article by ICV2.com, which is it's a website that's mostly aimed actually towards store owners and comic book store owners, and it's about gaming, comic books, nerd culture stuff, but it's more of a business to business type site. And they wrote an article about us as well, and that's also helped out a lot too. So if your local store needs some convincing, send them some links. If you go to the imgame4.com website, we have a section called I think news, and in there's a whole bunch of links to all the different articles and stuff about us. So you could send them some links from there if you really wanted to. Ruben says, "Hi, Uncle Adam. Can we consider you an influencer already?" I guess. I mean, if you want to. I have worked with some companies, and they've sometimes sent me stuff and things like that. I have been called an influencer. I've been called a bunch of other stuff too, but so I mean, it depends on whether we want to do all those different things or not. Dewey asks, is Game 4 usable in the UK, or is it just an American app? Worldwide. It's designed to be used worldwide. We are planning, and this won't really matter for the UK so much, but we are planning soon also, this summer, we're going to start multi-language support. So like German and Spanish and French and Polish and Portuguese and things like that. So we're going to base it off of analytics and look at like where the most traffic is coming outside of the United States, let's say, and then, kind of aim a little bit more towards those languages first, but we do want to spread it out all over the place. So it makes things more difficult because then, you kind of have to, like anytime you make big updates, you then have to make it, X amount of times for all these different languages. But we think it's kind of important, so it is definitely something we're heading towards. We couldn't launch with it because it was one of those deals where you have to kind of eventually find a cutoff point and then actually launch. And we didn't even really know if anybody was going to, like, if we went through all the work to make it all kinds of extra languages, we're not sure if that was going to necessarily help us in the beginning. But now that we've been getting really good response, it's been something we've been kind of focusing on. Headhunter says, "Hi from Pittsburgh. Sorry I'm late." Oh, that's okay. We're about 45 minutes in. It's fine. Cyrus Allen, one of the two, says, "Can you make a Sylvaneth painting tutorial?" I haven't painted any. Actually, Jason Stevenson here, who's in the chat, he's a Sylvaneth player. I can tell you just generally, one of the things that you could do that'd be very quick is to go out, if you can find it, and try to find some Krylon camouflage paint. They make a dark brown color. They make two tans, like a light tan and a dark tan, but you want the actual dark brown color. If you use that as your primer, it then also becomes kind of your base coat. Then you throw some wash on the wood parts, and then you do some dry brushing with like a lighter color of wood, if that's the way you want to go. And then, paint your leaves green and do all that other stuff. But it's a good primer and base color, so it's saving you a step. That's just, I guess, off the top of my head, that's the way I would go. It's kind of like when you're painting skeletons. If you use a light tan, like camouflage primer, like from Krylon, it will become the primer, but also the base color. And then you throw a sepia wash over all the bone parts, let that completely dry brush up with like an off-white kind of bone color to kind of lighten things up, but still like all the little recesses in the rib cage have gotten darker now because of the sepia. You dry brush those highlights up, get the top of the head, all that kind of jazz, top of the shoulders. And then paint all the other parts that the skeleton's got, like, if he's carrying a shield and a sword, or if he's got, like, tattered pants or whatever, or all that kind of stuff. So, yeah, absolutely. VJ Morph says, "Hey, Adam, just to be serious for a minute, what/how can I participate in TMX remotely? Any specifics on what sessions you might stream/live chat?" Well, I tried to do a live show from the show last year, and that didn't particularly work. Not because of the internet. The internet was awesome because it's a university, so there's very good internet. But my laptop was not super happy about live streaming for some reason. So I might do something like that again this year. I'm not 100% sure, but I'm kind of looking into it to see how that'll go. That's the best I've got at this point, I think. So yeah. The Mini Network says, question, any tips on starting a YouTube channel? Consistency is key. You need to determine that you're going to do it every Tuesday or every Wednesday or every other Thursday or whatever it is, and then stick to it, and then try your damnedest to never miss that date. That's probably one of the bigger ones, because if you're very consistent and you keep doing it at the same time, the same day, whatever, and you keep doing that, it helps YouTube understand that you're serious about it, and then YouTube will give you a better page ranking very frequently, or video ranking, excuse me. Also, make sure you got good audio if you can, because people in our, a lot of the people right now are not particularly looking at me. Many of you are painting or building or whatever and just listening, which is totally fine. I appreciate it. If you're not looking, then you don't get to see cool tricks like this. Wait, hang on. Wait, I can't. That didn't work. Anyway, but yeah, so good audio. If the audio is terrible, then people won't want to listen. So that's also important. William Buckby says, I would love to build and paint an army, but I am broke and can't even afford to buy one, let alone the supplies or paints. I would tell you to start looking for models on eBay, potentially, or sometimes the local shops will have used models and things like that that you can get for real cheap. And then, you don't need to... It's nice to have lots and lots and lots of different colors, because if you need to then go back and paint this guy's pouch again to touch it up, or paint other guys' pouches who need to look like they're part of the same army, then it's very easy to just go find pouch brown or whatever paint you used and do that. But you can also mix all the colors that are possible pretty much by knowing a little bit about color theory. If you're like, I don't have any purple paint, but I do have red and blue, you can kind of do that. So that's something to look at too. And like I said, you don't need expensive brushes. Cheap brushes will do just fine in many situations, especially if you're starting out. So Johannes, I could be pronouncing that incorrectly, and I apologize. Games Workshop pushing Sigmarines, even in Shadespire, keeps me away from it. Well, I mean, you don't have to use the Stormcast. Like, if you buy the base game, you could totally just use the Khorne guys and just paint those up, and then not even bother with the other guys if you're going to be playing against other people who also have their own copy of the game or whatever. Or you could buy the starter box and then buy one of the other forces, like the skeletons, or the dwarves are pretty cool, the Skaven are pretty cool. You don't have to use those guys. Heck, you could probably, if you want to, just sell them on eBay. You know what I mean? Buy the starter box, build the Khorne Bloodbound guys, and then buy an extra box, the one of the war bands, and then sell the other guys, make some money back if you want to. The reason they're putting emphasis on Stormcast is because they know it sells. People like Stormcast, just like same with Space Marines. People like Space Marines, and so they're like, well, we're going to make more Space Marines because we've got to keep the lights on and keep our employees paid. So that's why they do it. I think that if it turned out that, I don't know, like if it turned out that Lizardmen, like they couldn't keep Lizardmen in stock because everybody wanted to buy them so quick, they would make more Lizardmen. You know what I mean? That being said, I really do hope that eventually they make a Lizardman, or Seraphon, whatever they're called now, warband for Shadespire, because I've never painted any of them before, and it would be fun to paint anywhere from 4 to 7 of them, I assume. So yeah, that would be cool. A million bottles of Nuln oil cried out and then were suddenly silenced. I'm not quite sure what that's... I don't know what happened there. Let's see here. Frankie Lee Bailey says, I too was listening as Adam was talking. Side question, can someone help me get this super glue out from between my fingertips? That's true. See, if you try to do the trick, we do that around the office, but it's easy. See, it looks like I've covered my... but I'm not. I'm not spreading my thumb apart at all. Anyway, yeah. Dylan asks, how would you start in building an Age of Sigmar army with the starter set or the start collecting sets? I feel like I need to build an army right away. Well, I would definitely look at a start collecting set that is for a force that you like the look of or you think would be cool. The starter boxes, like there's a big starter box that they originally launched that had a bunch of Stormcast in it and a bunch of the Khorne, like Bloodbound guys. If you want to run one of those armies, then that's a good starter box to get, and maybe you'd look at doing that. And then the upside is that you could then, if you want to, either go in with somebody else if they wanted the other army, or you could shift the second army on eBay if you wanted to. You could do that. And that's a pretty good value, but like those start collecting boxes at like $85 American, those are really good values. Most of those boxes basically have a free piece of something in there. Like if you take it and you look at what's in the box and then you count up the retail value for everything, there's usually something in there for free. Like if you look at, going back to the Lizardman again, if you look at the Lizardman box, there's a Carnosaur in the box. And the Carnosaur is an $85 model. So if it's an $85 start collecting kit and it comes with an $85 model, then everything else in the box is basically free. I think I'm saying that properly. Anyway, yeah, I would definitely like start with a start collecting box. Be cognizant about whether there's a hero in there or not, because you generally need a hero to be your general, but you don't always. And then just kind of go from there, maybe add on parts from there. But those start collecting boxes are completely designed to help you start your collection, strangely enough. So yeah. Bad Mooner says the statue in front of the GW building is a Stormcast. If you're hoping they stop pushing Stormcast, you're going to have a bad time. Yeah, they did switch that up because it used to be a Space Marine, and then when they launched Age of Sigmar, then they changed that statue out in front of the building, and now it's a Stormcast, which I was surprised by, frankly. A lot of people were surprised by it, but yeah, he's out there getting rained on and pooped on by pigeons or whatever. Do they have pigeons? You must have pigeons in the UK. I'm assuming you do. Douglas Hooker says, really enjoying Saga. The new rules are easier to read and navigate this version. Yeah, I know that they came out with this stuff, and I was hoping to maybe try to get a demo of the new Saga at Adepticon, but as I kind of expected, time got away from me, and I was in meetings and talking to lots of people, which I enjoy doing, don't get me wrong, and the meetings are very useful. But sometimes I wish that, I don't know, sometimes I wish I had like twice as much time at Adepticon so that I could actually do more demos and things like that. But yeah, so let me see here. What else have we got here? Adam, love the live show, says Patrick. Off to the grocery store, but don't stop on my account. Catch you later. All right, well, I appreciate it. I thanks for letting me know. I'm glad that people enjoy this because it's enjoyable to do it. Esther says, for many armies, you can double or triple up on the start collecting set to get a fast army. That works well for Seraphon and Sylvaneth and other things that include a big multi-kit. That's also true. Like Seraphon, that Carnosaur model that comes in it can be built like at least 2, if not 3 different ways. And same with the Sylvaneth. There's a big tree that comes in that thing, and it can be built at least 2 different ways, maybe 3. So if you buy 2 of the main boxes, then you can, you can build. You've got 2 of the same forces, but like this guy can be built this way, and then this guy can be built the other way, even though they're the same model, but they can be built differently. That's the kind of the benefits of doing those things. J.E. Granberg says, do you think that Games Workshop will return to Mordheim, or do you think that with the end of the old world they will continue to push Shadespire instead? Shadespire is a very different game than Mordheim. Like, Mordheim is very much, well, I was going to say Mordheim is very much like Frostgrave, but Frostgrave is basically like they sat down and said, you know what, a lot of people like Mordheim, and they haven't made Mordheim in a long time, so we're going to kind of try to tweak Mordheim and make it our own to some degree. It's very Mordheim-like, Frostgrave, but I like it, and this is going to sound terrible, I do like it a little bit more, and it's mainly because I can jump between different kind of factions without having to completely redo all my henchmen. You know what I mean? Like if I decide I want to stop being an elementalist faction and I want to become a necromancer faction, I just have to change out my wizard, my apprentice, but the regular henchmen can just like, whatever, dude, we'll work for whoever pays us. You don't have to have specific henchmen that only work with one faction. I like that. So that being said, will they go back to it? I think they might. I don't know. I mean, like they went back to Necromunda, but it's a different kind of Necromunda than we're used to. I mean, with the Gang War add-ons and stuff like that, you can make it kind of like the more three-dimensional. So, I mean, I would be bummed if they made, frankly, Mordheim to be more board gamey. You know what I mean? But I don't know. We'll see. I think they've got other stuff right now in the fire, and they're maybe pushing that one out a little ways. It's kind of like, I guess, in baseball when you've got like, that like your third or fourth batter like is supposed to be really good, because then that can help to kind of clean up. It's like you know what I mean? Like if there's already people out on the base because people got singles and doubles, and now you put your really good hitter on, so maybe they'll be able to get all of them in and you'll get more points. It's maybe like that. Maybe they're like kind of doing these other things, but they're holding back on Mordheim because they're like, well, maybe in 2 years we'll drop Mordheim and then all of a sudden make a big increase in sales again or something like that. I mean, it's business. They got to think that way. And they can't release everything all at once, Lord knows. So, I mean, Fantasy Flight tried that and it did not work. Like they released a huge new wave for X-Wing. They also released Armada, and they released like Imperial Assault. All those got released like almost the same month. And then a bunch of people were like, I only have so much money. I can't buy all of these. And so it wasn't, from what I understand, it wasn't Fantasy Flight's fault. It was a bunch of stuff got caught at the port in LA, and there was a strike, so nothing was getting offloaded off of ships. And then when it all finally came together, all this stuff got offloaded off the ship at the same time, and then they were kind of boned. But yeah. All right, let's see here. Joshua says, planning on getting a buddy or two of mine and start collecting kits for their birthdays. Well, that's very nice. They've always wanted to start playing these armies. Might as well help them out. That's a very nice thing to do. And again, like I said, the start collecting boxes are great values, and they're really good for getting new armies started, getting new people into. I just bought one. Where did I put it? The Vanguard one, the Stormcast Vanguard one, so I can add them to my Vanguard army when I get that all finished up or get it going. I'll be able to add those types of Stormcast into my Stormcast army. My Stormcast army is my third army, so it's a ways away. But I like to pick the stuff up and make sure that I'm cool on that. VJ Morph says, I'm pretty sure I have pre-approval for TMX 2019. All right, well that's cool. You will become probably the new winner of who came the furthest away. If you come from Australia, absolutely. That would be cool. Paul says, do you think that the new Primaris Marines will ultimately end up replacing the regular Space Marines? That's a good question. I don't think so. Probably not. I don't know. It would seem unlikely. They would have to really go through. I mean, the whole concept behind the Primaris Marines is that they're a new type of Marine. They brought them in. They're 2 wounds versus 1, at least in the stats and things like that. But they're like a new thing. It kind of adds new story. Like I could easily see. Whoops, clunked the table there. I could easily see like there being some distrust. Like the normal Space Marines are like, I don't like these new tall guys. That kind of thing. I mean, it's got to be really funny when you're thought of as the humongous giant superhuman for so long. Like when normal humans see you, they shudder in fear because you're 7 feet tall, and especially when you're not even in your armor. You're just walking around like in a sarong or whatever it is that you do when you're not in your armor. I'm assuming they wear sarongs a lot. And everyone's just like, wow, that guy's huge. And then you're like the big man on campus, as it were. And then along come the Primaris Marines who make you look like a little guy. That's got to be probably annoying. So I hope that kind of storyline shows up in some future Black Library. Like I would definitely like to see some Space Marines gossiping about the Primaris and calling them names and things like that. Maybe that won't happen, but I might write something. You never know. So yeah, it's interesting. Let's see here. What else? Cool. All right. What else have we got here? There's lots of conversation going back and forth, which is always awesome. Has there been any non-Primaris kits coming out since the first Primarchs? Or since the first Primaris? I mean, within regular Space Marines, I don't know. I don't think so. But amongst other kits, I mean, I believe there's been non-Primaris like Blood Angels? Question mark, maybe. Well, there was only just like that one lieutenant guy, and he might have been Primaris. Now that I can think of it, yeah, I don't know. I mean, maybe they're going to just completely stop making them, and eventually they'll just be phased out. But I would think not. I mean, as it is, they've been cranking out those kits forever, so Lord knows, Yeah, I don't know. It's a good question. I don't know, and they haven't said. Lord knows. So yeah. Any suggestions on equipping a great unclean one, or just plague sword and flail? I haven't looked at their stats yet, so I don't know. I was thinking about it for a while. There was like a little bit of time when I was like, yeah, I should get a great unclean one. But then I was like, well, I could use it in my Chaos Army for 40k. Could technically also use it in my Chaos Army for Age of Sigmar. But he is a big, big, big model, and I've already got a Glotkin, and so I got it. Yeah, I just haven't pulled the trigger on him, and I don't know that I'm going to. So yeah, that's kind of where that's at. Lord and Losser says, Uncle Adam Primaris fanfic confirmed. Sure, yeah, my wife could be my editor. It'll be great. Let's see here. What else? Douglas Hooker says it felt like Warlord, the game company, Warlord Games, are making a full and separate Hail Caesar skirmish version. The way the demo guy was talking, so Warlord made a skirmish historical game, which does not happen too frequently. You do not see too many historical skirmish games. Not too many that I can think of. A lot of historical games are lots and lots and lots of models. So, but they produced a game called Test of Honor, which is like Japanese kind of samurai era historical, and it is a skirmish game. I just got my set painted up by a friend of mine who is a commission painter, and he and I are doing a bit of a trade thing. But I will be soon learning more about the game, and then probably trying to play it a bit, and possibly even doing definitely at least doing a showcase where I kind of show them off. But I'm also going to probably maybe try to do a bat rep at some point. But Test of Honor is like you're starting to see even more historical games that are kind of skirmishy. I mean, Saga is a little skirmishy. It's not tons and tons and tons of models like a lot of like American Civil War type games or Napoleonics or things like that. I mean, even if you look at Warlord's other games like Bolt Action and Conflict 47, you're still, I mean, it's usually 30 models or so in a force, or right around there, which is not, it's not like 6, like normal, what we think of generally when we think of skirmish, but it's kind of large skirmish. It's certainly not a full army kind of style game. So, it's interesting. And I'm interested to see what they do with the Hail Caesar skirmish version. I think that'd be kind of interesting as well to check that out. Definitely. Let me see here. I just make all my Marines Primaris size now because the old Marine models look like trash size-wise compared to the Primaris Marines. See, for me, if I'm going to start using the Primaris Marines, which I am, because I've built a Primaris army and they're almost ready to be primed. Very soon they'll be starting to get primed. If I'm going to use Primaris, then I'm going to use the Primaris stats because they're kind of better and that kind of stuff. Like if you were to say, I'm just going to start using the Primaris Marines but make them regular Marines, well, then they're 1 wound and you probably need a lot more. So I'm fine with keeping my Primaris guys with the Primaris stats. And like I said, right now, the majority of, my 2,000 point army that I've built is all Primaris. But partially that's because I really only have one vehicle in the army, one transport vehicle, and it's the Repulsor grav tank thing, which only Primaris guys can ride in for some reason. I've said it before. I've kicked around the idea. I want to make a short little video about why only Primaris guys can ride in the Repulsor, and I think it's because the seats have got like a plug in the back for charging, and I think it's like USB-C to USB-A, and it's not the right kind of plug, and that's why because the regular Space Marines would fit inside because they're smaller. You'd think you could fit more of them in there, but they would not. It's either that or else the regular Space Marines won't go into the repulsor tank because when they sit in the seats, their legs dangle because they're too short. That could be part of it too. I'm not sure. And they don't want to feel silly. I can understand that. Douglas Hooker says Test of Honor is brilliant. Well, good. I'm looking forward to it. They were painted quite nicely. The ones that I've had my friend paint. Warstein Studios. If you look up Warstein Studios on Instagram, you can find cool pictures of his stuff. Warstein, like a stein of beer, and like war, like you're hitting someone with it, I guess. That's Warstein Studios. But can I type it into the thing? Sometimes my keyboard works, and sometimes it does not. Currently it does. Warstein Studios on Instagram. There you go. All right. Iridil says going purely Primaris would be so limiting now. Well, I mean, for my starter army, I think, for getting back into Space Marines in general, I'm doing 2,000 points of just basically Primaris. I mean, you've got chaplains now, you've got captains, you've got lieutenants, you've got apothecaries. They've made kind of Primaris versions of most of that stuff, which is cool. Then I'm going to build a detachment added on later that's going to be AdMech. So that will give me more flexibility and stuff. And again, I'm not super competitive. So, if you're talking about it being limiting because of the strategic choices, frankly, you're talking to the wrong guy because I wouldn't know. I generally just like to build them and play them because they're fun and I like the look of them. And if it's not a good tournament list, that's fine because I generally don't go to tournaments. And I don't seemingly mind losing against my friends too much. But most of my friends aren't, well, most. I'm not. There are a couple that are, most of them don't play super, tournament, face-crushing lists. I have a couple of friends that don't know how not to. Generally, it's I just like to play fun games, so that's kind of the way I do that. Sam Hinchy says, so this is just a feel. Most tabletop games have that grimdark and depressive feel, but Age of Sigmar is the only one with a hopeful feel. That's kind of why I've moved away from 40k and into Age of Sigmar. That's interesting. I mean, if you think about Age of Sigmar, really, it's technically a post-apocalyptic game. Now, it's not obviously... When people think about post-apocalyptic, they think, Mad Max, and they think driving around in cars, and, spraying the silver stuff on your teeth and all that. That's not what I mean when I say post-apocalyptic. I mean that after the end times in the old world, and the old world was basically destroyed, you could say that was an apocalypse. And now it's after that, so it's post-apocalyptic. So, Chaos won, kind of, and had sort of taken things over, and now we're trying to take it back. And by we, I mean good guys, I guess. We consider ourselves good guys, whatever. You may not play that faction, and that's fine too. But in general, the Sigmar and the Free Peoples and the Stormcast and all that stuff are the Order is trying to fight back against Chaos. So yeah, that I could see that as being hopeful. I don't know. I'm of two minds of what you would normally consider post-apocalyptic games, because sometimes those post-apocalyptic games are like everybody's kind of a bad guy, or sometimes the post-apocalyptic games are like, well, there's some good guys, but most everybody else is a bad guy, so the good guys are probably not going to win. Like Wreckage, I think Wreckage is taking place where the world is sort of fixing itself to some. It's things are getting better, but there's still a lot of shenanigans going on. I personally think that Wreckage is more hopeful as a game than, let's say, there's a couple other ones that I can't think of the name of it off the top of my head. Eden, I think, is another one that's not very, that seems like everybody's kind of a bad guy. It does, like, when you look at the factions, I'm like, I can't tell who's good here. When you look at the factions for Wreckage, like the Stakers are definitely kind of good to some degree because they're trying to like farm the land and get back into civilization and do things like that. You have bad guys like the Stitchers who just want to steal everyone's organs because they're basically like just trying to keep themselves alive. And they figure, well, if you got organs, I like organs. let's not make a deal and I'll just take your organs. So that's not cool. But so yeah, I think that when everybody's bad, I'm less interested in a game if there's some good guys and some bad guys. Good people, bad people, whatever. Good aliens, bad aliens. Depends on what your kind of game you're playing. Then I'm a little bit more interested. But if everybody's equally kind of crappy, then I'm just kind of like, well, then who cares, So I get that. I understand that. Okay, just checking the time. Airedale says, but it's a let's take the world back post-apocalypse, not let's survive another day post-apocalypse. See, yeah, that's kind of what I was trying to talk about. Ming Lord says, how often do you play tabletop games, Adam? Weekly, monthly? I try to make it more close to weekly, but it ends up being a little bit more close to monthly, at least lately, just because there's been a lot of travel. I'm not going to lie. There are plenty of times when I was kind of hoping to play a game, and then the only night that I have free to play the game that week is the Thursday night, and that's usually the night that I end up making the Friday video, so then I don't have time to play the game. Doing the channel does cut into the hobby time, so if people are interested in starting their own channel, understand that it becomes its own hobby to some degree. And if you do it long enough and you do it hopefully well enough, and people like you enough, eventually it also becomes kind of a side job. So that also takes even more work at that point. So I don't get to play as much as I would like. I get to hobby more than I get to play, which is, frankly, for me, I really like to hobby. It's not that I like to hobby more. I just like... I don't know. I like to hobby a lot. Let's just say that. And I like to play, but I like to hobby probably a little bit more. But I'm, if I've got the chance to play, then I want to. It's just that I can hobby at 11 o'clock at night, whereas it's usually hard to play with someone at 11 o'clock at night because they got to go to bed, I got to go to bed, we got work or whatever. There's different things going on. But being able to sneak some time away to hobby for an hour or so is not that bad. But I would like to play more, certainly, absolutely. Let me see here. What else have we got? Uncle Adam, give us a shout out to the Isle of Wight in the UK because it sounds really cool when someone famous says it. Well, then you should find somebody famous to say it. I'm not at. Shout out to the Isle of Wight. I'm not the famous guy to say that, but Isle of Wight sounds cool. I like white, like the undead. Are they white? Are whites ghosts, or are they undead? My wife is shaking her head. I'm not sure. I swear to God, whites are like a thing. That's like a, maybe a D&D thing. David Turner says, played my first game of 40K in almost 25 years last weekend. It was great. Well, that's a long time to go in between games. But I'm glad that you enjoyed it. The 8th edition, the new version of 40K, has brought, I think, a lot more people into the hobby and brought more people back into the hobby than it has chased away. There are some people who are like, oh, I just don't like 8th anymore. I really liked 7th, and that's fine. That's what they like. I found 8th to be way better than 7th because 7th was crazy confusing and just everything was nuts. And it just was not to my liking. But people got their own opinions. That all being said, it seems by sales that 8th is doing just fine. So, now is a good time to be getting back into the hobby. And so welcome back. Torch says, I'm a school teacher and it's spring, which means I have zero hobby time. Can't wait for June. Oh yeah, no, definitely. If you're a teacher and you got the summer mostly kind of off, then that would be a great hobby time. You could spend a lot of time doing that. That'd be cool. But yeah, right now, especially because it's just about to be May. If you're like a school teacher as opposed to a college professor, college gets out mid-May generally, at least around here, whereas school gets out early to mid-June. So yeah. Definitely. What else have we got here going on? Headhunter says, whites are things that lived under the barrows and nearly killed Sam and Frodo until Tom Bombadil rescued them. In D&D, they drain a level. Well, see, that's the difference. So there you go. My wife is enjoying the Lord of the Rings reference. Criterion? I'm pronouncing this completely wrong. Adam, I need a color theorist. For Stormcasts, what color pairs well with a dark bronze color? Huh. Okay, so bronze is kind of a reddish coppery color generally, maybe with not quite as much red, a little bit more on the brown. So if you were going to go with a warmer color like that and you wanted to, did you say contrast? Pair well. Well, if you're looking for a complementary color, you might think about green. I don't know that blue would be that great because bronze can be, yeah, because like brass is a lot yellowier. Bronze is like not quite copper, but it's getting closer. It's like a warm, it's like a dark copper almost sometimes. Depends on the paint line too. Yeah, I would think maybe green would be a good one. Like a darker, like a hunter green maybe that might work out well. Um, I wouldn't go, like I said, I wouldn't go with maybe purple. Purple could be good, or violet, whatever you want to call it. That could also be something to think about. Um, I would love to have some sort of easy way to be able to look at a model, like take a picture of a model, and then like test colors on it. You know what I mean? Just to kind of get an idea. That would be really cool. I think. I don't know how it would work, but yeah, I do it sometimes in Photoshop, but not everybody has Photoshop. Like I'll take a picture of a model sometimes, like on a white background, and then I will bring it into Photoshop and then throw a layer over it, and then just kind of be like, well, what if this was this color, and what if this was this color, and then do it in a way that it's kind of transparent, so you still get the shading and the detail, but you're able to put some purple, or you're able to put some brown or some green or whatever over it, that kind of thing. I think that'd be kind of cool. So yeah, Poppy Apple Tree is backing me up on this. Purple would look awesome because bronze is a warm color. Aim for a cool contrast. That's true. There's a lot of miniature painting is about contrast. Like if you paint something so that all the colors are all warm or all the same color, it's kind of hard. Now sometimes you end up going that direction just because of the way that the model is. Like a skeleton, generally skeletons are warm because they're an off-white, like a cream color, depending on how dirty they are. But you could also, if you wanted to make like a ghost skeleton and make them kind of like green, super light green and highlighty, you could do that too. But like we were actually having a conversation about this yesterday. Jason's skeleton's here, so you'll notice how like the base down here, like the skeleton, like he's got a green cloak on the skeleton, but the skeleton's got a warm thing. Green's a cool color. Also the base down here, and again, you can't see I keep thinking that you can see my cursor, but you can't. But the base down there, his bases are much more kind of bluish black or bluish gray, whereas my bases on my Stormcast are much more of a neutral color. And so that cool color of the base down there, against the warm color of the skeleton makes a nice contrast, makes the skeleton pop a little bit more, makes him stand out. Or her, I don't know. It's hard to tell when there's no skin left. So yeah, definitely. JP Got Rocket says that ochre pairs well with bronze. Yeah, I could see that too. I could see that. Let me see here. What else? Jason says Adobe Drawing app for iPad, if I recall correctly, can import a photo and then do color overlays with a lighter opacity. I mean, normally what I'm doing when I'm trying to do an overlay like that is I set a layer to multiply and then do the color over that, and then that way you're not lightening up the color when you paint it over it. It's coming through at full opacity, or it's coming through at full intensity, but it is transparent. It's like taking like if you had like a red piece of clear plastic and then putting it over a black and white image, if you were to just put red over something and it was opaque and then just turn up the transparency, that red gets lighter as you do it. Now you can see the picture behind it, but the red gets lighter. When you set a layer to multiply in, it's a technical thing, it's in Photoshop. When you do that and you lay it over it, it's transparent, but you don't have to make the color get lighter to make that transparency occur. It's a technical issue. Anyway. Let's see here. Minglord says, "Who has done the best paint job on a model you've ever seen, Adam? And what was that? What was it a model of?" Oh, gosh. Well, it's probably Sam. Who, by the way, Sam and I are going to be filming new episodes next week on Saturday, on the 5th of May. So you won't see them right away, but they're going to be getting filmed in the new studio on next weekend. So that's going to be fun. I mean, it's going to be fun because I've got to get a bunch of stuff done in the studio before we can actually really do it. But there's also that. I'm going to say, well, I mean, his Archaon was pretty crazy good. I mean, really good. I've seen some pretty amazing stuff at the Crystal Brush, though, too. But I would say, I don't know, I really like a lot of Sam's work so much, and it's just amazing to watch. I did see there was a model that won the Crystal Brush maybe 3-4 years ago. Like everything in the Crystal Brush has been getting big lately. Like the big winners every year now these days seem to be dioramas. But this was probably 3-4 years ago, maybe more, and it was a normal 28 millimeter scale, and it was like the Lady of the Water, and it was this woman, and then there were like tentacles coming up out of the water around her, and it was such a tiny little piece. It was amazing, yet the amount of like freehand brushwork on her dress looked like lace, but that was not the texture of the model. That was just the paint job, and I could not even imagine how it was done. It was just astounding. Definitely, if you ever get the chance and you want to mess with it, just go to like the Crystal Brush, website. Go do a Google search for Crystal Brush and go back and look through some of the winners, and you'll see some amazing stuff. But yeah. Jez Hunt says, white was used by Tolkien for the spirits of the barrows. Gygax picked it up and it's used for undead now, but it means person, really. We're all gaming whites. Oh, okay. That's cool. Dario says, I want to watch a narrative game in 40K for Uncle Adam to play. Well, I mean, that's probably going to be a little bit more likely what my battle reports are going to be, is there can probably be a bit more narrative and certainly not strategic or competitive. Yeah. DJ Todd P. Harris says, off to prepare my Zombicide campaign. I'm playing with my wife today. Later, guys. Well, have a good time, DJ Todd P. Harris. Yeah, there's a benefit, I think, to that, being able to like Zombicide is definitely a gateway game that is designed for getting people into, I think, getting people into the concepts of wargaming, or at least getting people at least used to wargaming, you know what I mean? Because it's a very, it's still board game-ish, but it's also got like miniatures, and you're getting some idea of like, well, if I move here, this will be able to be more advantageous versus if I move there. Shadespire is kind of the same way, so. Paul asks, do you... I think there's a word missing. Possibly no. Do you know of any good metal or metallic paints? I was thinking of tryouts. Red metallic paint for a small squad of my Blood Angels. I haven't used I use metallic paints, here and there, but I don't use they're usually like silver color or gold color or bronze or copper. I haven't used any like red metallic or blue metallic or anything like that. Lately, one of my favorite metallic paints actually is Vallejo Model Air Metallics. So it's technically an airbrush color, and it's called Chrome. But if you use it and paint it on with a brush, it is incredibly opaque, but it's also very smooth. It's a lighter kind of silver, shiny, and it's seriously like a one coat wonder. It's amazing how smooth it. I mean, I've shot it through the airbrush, and it's cool that way too. But just taking some and just using it like on your wet palette and using it with a brush, even though it's an airbrush paint, man. I used it on my Forge Fiend. Yeah, I used it on my Forge Fiend for all of that silver trim on him. I don't have a picture here I can show you, but yeah, it turned out really amazing. That stuff is crazy, because a lot of metallics can be kind of thick. This is very fluid. A lot of metallics you can see a lot of brush strokes in them sometimes. You got to do multiple layers and go that way. This stuff is amazing. Yeah, I was really surprised. Six Gunner 86 says, Adam, can you do every other Sunday show stripping with Uncle Adam? That's gonna get me demonetized again. Probably not. Although, do I have anything to strip right now? I don't. Yeah, I do have some things to strip, but I need to use those actually in a show. So I need to film the stripping before I actually do it. I don't have anything right now. It needs to be stripped just for myself, but for the show I have something for my upcoming show, Uncle Adam's Miniature Hot Mess, which is still on its way. Right now, I was just thinking of the bench that I use downstairs for where I usually put the stuff on the strip. But right now, it's currently wiggling a lot because it's got my 3D printer is 3D printing, and I am making a model. I'm making a project. I want to make a statue like for terrain. So I think I've talked about Hero Forge. I've talked about Hero Forge on the channel before. So Hero Forge is a company that it's a website you go to, heroforge.com, I think, and you go to it and you can build your own characters, and then they will 3D print them and then send them to you. They're not cheap. They're about $35, though to be fair, some Games Workshop single guys are also $35. And that $35 is including shipping, at least in the United States. Overseas, I don't know. But you can go through and say, I want, to pick a man shape or a woman shape or a dwarf man or woman or a robot man or woman or a zombie or, like this dragonborn or all kinds of different stuff. And then you can be like, okay, cool, I'm going to do that. And I want to put this kind of pants on them and this sort of shield and this and whatever. And you can build and completely design. And they've got sci-fi stuff, post-apocalyptic stuff, fantasy stuff, modern stuff. And then you can say, okay, cool, print it. And then it's really good for, like, if you're playing Dungeons and Dragons or some other kind of role-playing game and you have your one guy. Like, this is my character. You can design them and then all that stuff. And the quality is really quite nice. All that being said, they've recently added something now, too, where you can say, okay, cool, I don't want to get the model printed. I just want the shape. I just want the file, the STL file for 3D printing. And that's like $10. And then they send it to you like in 15 minutes or whatever. They have to do some processing and whatever. And then they go, boop, here's the file. Feel free to download it. So I did that. And I then put it into my Slicer program, which is the program that you take STL files and turns them into G-code. And that's what you can put into your printer so it actually does the job. The trick is that I was like, I didn't want it to be a normal 28 millimeter guy. So I just blew him up in my Slicer program. So he's 4 times taller than he should be. And because I want to make him a statue. So he's in a pose, that's very sort of statue-esque. It's not like an action, like jumping pose or shooting pose. He's more, anyway. It's for a post-apocalyptic piece of terrain that I'm building. I want to have this like hero of the apocalypse who then now that statue is all broken and busted up. But it's been printing down in the basement for, I think, 15 hours. I think it'll probably got another 3 or 4 hours to go. But I'll probably post some pictures of it and stuff like that when I get that done. But I just remembered that. When I started talking about stripping, that's where I usually do my stripping, and I remembered, oh, that's right, I was going to tell you guys that I've got a big 3D print project that I'm working on. That's when I mentioned in the details for this video that I've also wanted to talk about some of the projects. That's one of the projects that I'm working on is this cool like terrain piece that's going to be basically like a broken down statue, to be able to put into a post-apocalyptic thing. So that'll be fun. Randall says, I recently discovered shadowed steel from Reapers. It's a nice bluish metal. Yeah, I don't use as many Reaper paints as I ought to, but I probably ought to look a little bit more into Reaper. I know there's like a big kit you can buy, usually like on Amazon or places like that. I haven't ever seen the big kit in a store, but I know they do sell big kits of Reaper paints. Jason Wood says, second for Vallejo metal color. It's actually amazing. Yeah, I do like a lot of the Vallejos. Like these dudes here, my Stormcast, that's all Vallejo gold. That's all, it's old gold as a base color, brushed on mostly. Because these guys were primed originally dark brown with the Krylon camo, dark brown. And then I painted the gold parts all with the old gold. Then I threw a sepia wash over it. And then I went back and highlighted parts with regular gold, which is not old gold. And then did some extreme highlights with silver. Not the chrome that I was talking about, but just regular, I think, silver. Like a lighter silver. So. Rover says, do you mean Desktop Hero 3D? No, I mean Hero Forge. It's heroforge.com, I'm pretty sure. I've not heard of Desktop Hero 3D. I should look into it. I will try to remember. I'm going to remember by taking a picture of your comment, because that's how I take notes these days. Do you mean Desktop Hero 3D? Click. Okay. It's a lot faster than me trying to find a pen. All right. VJ Morph says, I'm looking at doing some experiments with paint pens so I can hobby sitting in my armchair in the evening in front of the TV. Sacrilege or good idea? I don't know. Because paint pens are, well, if you can find acrylic paint pens, that might work. I don't know. There are paint pens out there that are like, I think, enamels, and they may not work super awesome with the models that you want to use. I know I have seen somebody on YouTube a while back who was using Sharpies. Like if they needed to do black trim on like a shoulder pad for a Space Marine, they were just using Sharpies, and they're like, it actually doesn't work that bad. So that might work. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure about the regular like paint pens, like where you shake it up and you can hear it. It's like got a metal body to it and everything like that. I don't know what the heck is inside there. You know what I mean? Like if it's enamel, I don't know how well that's going to work. I mean, it's if you're doing an experiment, well, you know, do science on, and B, then let us know like how it works out because it would be interesting. Torch says, my wife has put a stop to the 3D printer idea. I'm stuck carving foam. Yeah, the 3D printer thing can be an issue. I mean, I bought a 3D printer and I'm enjoying it. And actually, I also that game we played yesterday of Shadespire, someone has made three-dimensional shapes that you can buy online for Shadespire. Like I forget what the heck site it's called. CG something or I can't. I'll have to, if I can find the link, I'll send it out maybe through Facebook or something like that. But it's basically, it was like $12 and you get the shape for the three different kind of terrain shapes. Like on Shadespire boards, some of the boards have like a hole, and this is like a impassable terrain spot. One's 1 hex, one's 2 hex, and one's 3 hexes. So someone made like a 3D shape for the 1 hex, the 2 hex, and the 3 hex. And it's for sale. It's like $12, and I'm going to print one of those too because of the set, so I can see how that works out too. But yeah, Airedale says, I heard you should use a special brush with Vallejo Metallic because they are alcohol based. Evidently, there is a version of metallics from Vallejo that is alcohol based, but they come in a completely different bottle. I think they come in like a bigger, thicker, round bottle that doesn't look as much like a skinny dropper like most of the Vallejos. The skinny dropper ones, from what I understand, are not alcohol based because I think they would have to say on the bottle, and then you'd have to mix it differently, and you couldn't thin it with water particularly. But there is a version of Vallejo. Vallejo does have some really fancy metallics that are a bit more alcohol based, but I haven't used any of those. I've seen people talk about them online. Joshua says, any experience with the Army Painter? I've been trying to expand my horizons with different brands. So far, I've worked with Citadel, Tamiya, Mr. Color, and Vallejo. I don't think I've ever heard of Mr. Color. Army Painter, I like the paints fine. I like the brushes maybe a little bit better. Well, that's not true. I like their brushes. I like their washes pretty well, although they are different than normal GW washes that we might be used to, and you have to kind of take that into consideration. But they have some definite uses that are kind of cool that way. I have some of their special effects stuff, like like their varnishes and things. I like their matte varnish pretty well. Their big cans of spray primer are not cheap, but man, is it nice to just be able to spray like a very specific primer color and then also have it be the base coat. Like if you were doing ultramarines, being able to buy that specific kind of ultramarine style blue, or if you were doing zombies, being able to buy like a necrotic flesh like in a big can for $15 and just go to town, and they have lots and lots and lots of different colors. So I like the Army Painter primers pretty well too. So Matthew Sears says, personally, I think Army Painter is a bit thick. I don't know if I've noticed that too much, but then again, I use a wet palette, so maybe I'm putting it in there. I'm seeing it's a little thick, and I'm just automatically adding a little bit more water to it. I mean, I add water to most of my paints. I generally don't paint out of the pot, and with Army Painter, you can't paint out of the pot because it doesn't come in a pot; it comes in a bottle. So you gotta stick it on. You gotta squirt it onto something, I would assume. But yeah, definitely. Jason Wood says, Army Painter is the most accessible for me just across the road, but I've had mixed results with it. Overall, I prefer Vallejo, but there's a few Army Painter colors I keep coming back to. That's the thing, is I'm not like super brand loyal in paints. I use a lot of different stuff. I use whatever works best for me, and I don't say, well, I can't use that because I don't use Like, I only use Citadel, or I only use Vallejo, or I only use Reaper. I use all kinds of different stuff. Some people will tell you that sometimes the different paint brands don't mix well together. I've never found that to be the case, but then again, I'm not a pro painter. I'm not like a cool, I'm not like a commission painter who does like amazing looking stuff, or a guy who enters, contests and tries to win and things like that. I'm a tabletop painter. And for me, I've never had any problem mixing stuff, from different brands. As long as they're all acrylic. Again, like I said, if you try to mix like acrylic and like enamel, that can probably bite you in the ass. So there's that. Let me see here. What else have we got? There's a decent amount of people here today. Let me see here. Oh, Melanie Dawn. Morning, guys. I need help. I've become completely disinterested in the hobby gaming campaign burnout. What can I do to get back into it? How can I get over the burnout? Yeah, that's a good question. I think that, everybody gets burnout in some fashion, whether it's painting burnout, sometimes it's just completely gaming burnout. I have found a couple different ways. Sometimes I focus on other stuff. I did a video about like if you need to procrastinate, or, if you need to procrastinate in a different way to get yourself back into painting. Lord knows there's times when I'm like, well, you know what? I'm just not interested in painting today. Today, I guess I'll go outside and do some yard work. And then that makes me want to paint real goddamn quick. You know what I mean? I'm just like, I don't want to do this anymore. I want to go back in the house and paint little people. So for me, that helps. Sometimes just focusing on something else you enjoy, like movies, if you like that, or, if you're into music. If it's something else, maybe creative, that's also not a bad way to go to. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of different ways, but it kind of depends, sadly, person to person, how it works. I like to, to generally focus a little bit more on, I don't know. I like to focus generally a little bit more on creative stuff, but there are times when my creative muscles break or something, whatever, and then I end up just kind of sitting on a couch watching movies, or maybe playing a video game once in a while. I haven't done a lot of video game playing in quite some time. Although they released finally the BattleTech PC game, which I've been thinking about picking up, though my PC game is not, or my PC is, this is okay, but it'll probably run BattleTech okay, but it's not great. I've been thinking about upgrading just because I need a slightly better editing machine, so maybe that'll help. I don't know. But that's I think best I've got, sadly. What else here? Oh, I keep clunking the table here, sorry. Douglas Hooker says, Army Painter have bolder colors than Vallejo. They do need a lot of shaking, I find. Citadel pigments seem stronger. Their quick shade is brilliant. The primers matching their bottled paints is cool. Yeah, that's also a nice benefit, too, is that you can buy a dropper bottle of a specific color and a can of a specific color and then kind of go to town. I think you can do that a little bit with Games Workshop. They do have some of their colors also in cans, but man, I can't find those cans anywhere. I mean, there's none of the local stores that I know of around here that are, non-GW stores. Maybe GW stores keep those spray cans in stock a little bit more, but none of the rest of them are doing it too much. So anyway, what else have we got here? Let me see. James Taylor says, my weeb friend thinks you should look at the screen instead of off to the side when you read comments. Okay, well, I don't know how I'm going to be able to do that because the comments are over there, and that's where the camera is. I'm generally kind of that. Tell your friend sorry. Anyway, what else? Johannes again, I'm not sure. When I get burnout, I take a break, and after a while, I read and then listen to fiction to get myself back into the mood. I also find, because I listen to audio when I'm painting, that because I like to listen to podcasts and I listen to audiobooks, very frequently the audiobooks and the podcasts actually get me back into painting, because I kind of feel weird just sitting there listening to an audiobook or just sitting there listening to a podcast. So I'm like, well, I want to listen to, there's more episodes of this podcast I want to listen to, or there's more chapters in this book I want to listen to. I guess I should go downstairs and paint while I'm doing it, or build, or whatever. The other thing I find too is that sometimes I get paint blocked and then I go back into build mode, or vice versa. So sometimes even just switching between the two different modes there helps as well. Um, let's see here. Question: due to Age of Sigmar's rule set, how do you interpret the true line of sight? People in my location say like, well, I can see a finger that pops out under the legs of that monster, so I can shoot it. I generally, people around here are usually like, if you can see the body, like if it's just like a finger or a horn or the tip of a spear, that doesn't count. But if you can see like the main, like the head or the arm, arms is maybe sometimes a different story, but it depends. Yeah, I mean it's hard. It depends on people. That's part of the problem with true line of sight is that you can get into, I don't want to say arguments, but you can be like, well, I think you can see more. Well, I came and looked and I didn't see that much or whatever. Sometimes maybe just decide to roll off, and if you lose the roll off, then maybe it's harder to hit you, but or it's easier to hit you. I don't know. That's the trick. I mean, if you're going to play in a tournament, hopefully the tournament organizers can come in and go look at it and go, okay, this is my ruling. But if you're just playing with friends, you just have to kind of make it work. You know what I mean? What else have we got here? I wish I got a chance to play tabletop BattleTech again. Well, I know that, like, well, yeah. I mean, I see it at conventions all the time. Like, there's tons of it going on at Gen Con. There's tons of it that looks like going on at Origins. I was looking at the Origins list and all that kind of stuff. Which, if I can just for a second, so like. To look at the Origins event list right now, you have to download the event list as a CSV file and then open it up in a spreadsheet program. And then you can scroll through it and then figure out what events are going on. And this is a convention with 20,000 people going to it. I'm a little surprised, frankly, because I was like, is that real? I have to download it as CSV file to look at the event list? I was frankly stunned. But anyway, I did notice a lot of BattleTech in there. So, yeah, I see some people doing that. But, yeah, around you locally, it might be kind of hard to find. Now, there's this app called Game4 where you could look there and then put in a looking for players and try to find people in your local area who are also interested in playing BattleTech. And maybe you'll find some, and then you'll start playing BattleTech with people locally. I'm just saying. You could look in iOS or Android app stores under Game4, Gamefor, and then you could, look it up and maybe find some people nearby. Just saying. What else have we got over here? Daryl Park says, oh, wait, no, that's a response to JP Got Rockets. They're talking about, I think, video games. Encoded Ogre. That's a fun word to say. Hey, Adam, how are your Imperial Guard coming along? Remember you talked about making a video on how to paint a bunch of models at the same time. They actually showed up in the screenshot for Friday's video, I think, if you remember. If I remember. I'm pretty sure that's where they were. Yeah, so that's coming still. They're sitting still on the paint sticks, waiting for the video to be made. Multi-camera videos have been a little slow lately because of the setup in the basement. Moving into the new studio should hopefully allow me to do like multi-camera type videos a little bit more easily. So I'm looking forward to that because I'll be able to do more tutorials, not just with Sam, but even tutorials that I'm doing. It'll just be easier to have multi-camera. Like I attempted it about 3-4 weeks back and it worked okay in some spots, but it wasn't a tutorial. I forget what the heck it was. Oh yeah, it was about when to dry brush, when you shouldn't dry brush. Like where in your process is the best place to do it. And I did have the second camera going, but it still is not ideal. So I'm kind of working on that. Once I get that all dialed in, both with lighting and with placement and all that stuff, then I'll be able to do a lot of things. Because I've got a bunch of stuff in my list of subjects, episode subjects for the Tabletop Meetings channel. Every time I come up with an idea, I punch it into my phone so I don't forget it. And there a bunch of them are a little bit more tutorial in nature. Kelly asks, hey Adam, how many people do you have at TMX? Last year we had like 65. It's a very small convention. Last year was also the first year. I don't think this year will be much bigger, but maybe. But yeah, it's a small little convention. So, and I think it's going to probably stay not necessarily this small forever. Maybe it will. I don't know. But I don't see it becoming very big. I don't see it being, 200, 300, 400, well, maybe 200 eventually, but I don't think it'll be like 500 folks. That seems like maybe, that's not really my plan, but we'll see how it goes. Boom, Game 4 plug from out of nowhere. Well, that's what I do. Sup, greetings from Poland. I've just begun playing Age of Sigmar with Beastclaw Raiders, and I find them kind of hard to paint well. Any tips on how to paint big models? Generally, big models, it helps if you can... Man, I would say big models, I generally try to paint more with spray than brush. Yeah, it's hard to paint big models with brush just because you get a lot of extra brush strokes. It just takes a lot longer. If you can find a way to do the models, like if you can, again, try to find a primer that will also work very well as a base coat, so that you can, in one step, both prime and base coat the model. That's something really to look into. It's a good idea. I would tell you, if you can, down the road at some point, try to get yourself an airbrush if you're going to be doing a lot more big models. Or if you live in a part of the world where it gets cold in the winter and then you can't really prime outside at all, looking into an airbrush is a really good idea, because it'll allow you to... Like, before I had an airbrush, there would be like one like really nice warm day, kind of in the late part of the fall, and I would rush outside with as many models as I could to try to prime them all, so that as many as I could, so I could get them, so I'd have something to paint over the long winter, because I wasn't going to be able to prime during the winter. Now, if I want to prime something during the winter, I mean, like 2 weeks ago or whatever, when it was snowing, 14 inches, I could have primed as many models as I wanted to with the airbrush, because it's not, you don't get that horrible propellant, you don't get all the problems you get trying to spray outside in cold weather or in rainy weather or in too humid weather, that kind of stuff. Let me see here. Oh, hey, the Terrain Tutor's here. Hey, Mel. Congrats on the Game 4 app, mate. Oh, thank you very much. I appreciate it. John J says, hats off to your missus for permitting you to spend time away at the studio for us nerds. I mean, we both have our own, things. She's in a couple different bands, and I've got this thing going on, and we're independent folks. It helps a ton, frankly, that we don't have any kids. Like, if we had kids we had to take care of, well, then obviously, then both of us have got like another job, which is taking care of children so that they don't, die or whatever. I don't know what kids do. And we have cats, but they're not going to college. I've said that before. So yeah, because we don't have children, we can spend a little bit more time on our hobbies and things like that. And we both have hobbies, like I said, between her being a musician and a knitter, and lately she's been watching a lot of hockey, because it's the hockey playoffs have started, and she's a big hockey fan. So yeah, we've got a good understanding that way, and I'm a lucky person because of it. So. Malev, how you doing? Adam, I'm seeing some Wreckage cards for sale on one of my favorite sites. What are cards used for in the game? The Wreckage, there are vehicle rules. I don't know if they're released yet. I'm not 100% sure. I would take a look and see if the vehicle rules are released, but there are going to be vehicle rules. If they're not already released, then they will be released soon. So they'll be, actually something you can use in the game as a unit. But they're also just really cool scenery as well, if you want to go that road. So they could become just terrain. But, yeah, that kind of stuff. Kelly asks, what are the hours of TMX? Generally, it's until 10 o'clock at night, and I want to say it starts maybe at 9, but maybe I'll double check on that. It's on the website, actually, if you look. I think if you look to... right there. If you go to the website, which is right here, www.tabletopmeans.org/tmx, then yeah, you can. I think the hours are on the website. So, alrighty. What else have we got? People talking about BattleTech, post 3025 stuff. Yeah, I sometimes miss BattleTech. That's why I want to get the video game, I think, just because then, like, if I just want to play some, but not, paint a bunch of guys and get a bunch of books and all that. Because I got to be honest right now, like, the normal classic BattleTech rules are still just really thick to me. Like there's way more going on there than I think there needs to be. And I know they've made a Alpha Strike rule set or First Strike or something like that, but it's really hard to find too. Like I was thinking about buying the starter box when I was at Gen Con last year, and they didn't have any. So I was like, well, all right, well, that's not going to help me out. So anyway, that's interesting. Hey, Adam, did you ever do a tutorial on OSL? I didn't, but Sam did, and he's better than me. So you might want to look into that one. That's sometime last year. It was painting an orc shaman, and he did a bunch of object source lighting in that. So, yeah. Torch says, Rattlecan blues are gone since I learned to prime with an airbrush. Yeah. No, it's nice. It's good stuff. Brian says, thanks to all the awesome vids. Thanks to you, I decided to take the plunge and get into Age of Sigmar. Well, good. Went into the Ideneth Deepkin. They may not be fishmen, but their backstory is so cool. Yeah, no, definitely. That's the backstory I haven't got a chance to look at yet, but I do want to read that because I mean, like I said, I'm not going to really probably be playing the army, so I'm not going to look at the rules as much, but I do like to know the backstory, so I'm glad that I do have the book to take a look at. Random Juror 1337 says Necron warriors have their heads attached to the sprue by their cheeks. It seems hard to get a clean cut and then go to that afterwards with a blade to clean it up. Should I be using a tiny file? What I have a tendency to do is I try to clip a little bit further away from the piece. You know, if you're using the little side clippers, I try to clip a little bit further away from the piece, from the sprue, and then go back after I've clipped it and then try to cut it as close and as smooth as possible with like an X-Acto type blade, you know. And then I will sometimes use a not so much, I don't usually use files. What I use is they're designed for hobby, but they're like a finger nail, it's like a emery board. But when I was a kid, emery boards were just hard. Now emery boards it's like 2 layers of emery, but then if that's what the stuff's called, but there's like foam in between, so it bends a little bit more, and it's a little bit more shock absorbent, so you're not able to put rough or flat spots in as easily. And if you go to your hobby store, a lot of times they will sell them in all kinds of different coarseness of it's almost like sandpaper, you know, there's like coarse, there's medium, there's fine, there's ultra fine or whatever. So you might want to look into something like that. That's like the last step a lot of times when I'm getting rid of mold lines or sprue attachment points, which is probably not the right term, but you know what I'm talking about. So yeah, that's not a bad idea. Cypress asks, did you ever try the WizKids Battletech / Mech Warrior? Like the Clicks version back in the day? Yeah, I did, because I was a fan of Battletech when I was a kid and younger and whatnot, and then they came out with Clicks, so they were all pre-painted and stuff. I'm like, oh, sweet. I actually went to tournaments once in a while with it, and that was where I think I first really learned that I did not like playing in tournaments, which was a bummer. But yeah, I did have a bunch of those models when they first came out, and then I sold a bunch of the like rare ones, and I just got rid of a bunch of the other ones. I do have like a box someplace in the basement with some in there, because every once in a while I've been like, you know, I could use these for some other game. I could pop them off the bases. I could use them as like, you know, like I was building a piece of terrain and I had to have like a robot like graveyard, or like this is where robots were built, but now it's all ruined, and so there's robot parts all over the place. I could just cut up a bunch of those and use them as extra robot parts. But that project hasn't started yet, so the box still sits in the basement. That's kind of the way it works. Michael says, hey Adam, do you think a mobile app would be a good idea for Warhammer 40k? I think the mobile app for Age of Sigmar has caused me to buy more Age of Sigmar models, because you'll be sitting like, I don't know, in line at the bank. Nobody goes to the bank anymore. I'm making that up. I mean, you're sitting on the toilet. So you're sitting there on the toilet and you're like going and looking on your phone, and you're like, oh yeah. And then you can look at different, you know, the thing that I really wish they would have done, and I still think it would have been a good idea if they would have done this with 40k. When they launched 8th edition, I was really hoping they were going to do the same thing that they did with Age of Sigmar and make the War Scrolls, which in 40k I guess would be data slates or data sheets, whatever. If they would have made all of the data sheets free, like get rid of the codexes, you don't need them anymore. Maybe you make some, you know, hang on. So like this isn't a codex, obviously. This is the battle tome. You don't need this, right? All the War Scrolls and stuff are online. They're in the app, whatever. But what you get from this is the fluff. You get painting guides, and you also get like special stuff that you can only get in here, like battalions and allegiance powers and junk like that. So that's at least a reason why you would then buy it. I was hoping they were going to completely get rid of the codexes and then just make it so that when you wanted to look up apps, or sorry, when you wanted to look up what a unit could do, you could do it in the new 40K app, which was much like the Age of Sigmar app, because it would sell more models. I know I've bought more Age of Sigmar models because I've been flipping through looking at stuff and going, oh, that's what that guy does? I'm going to get one of those. If you have to go and buy the codex to figure out what they're going to do and then decide to buy the models, that's just an extra outlay and it's less likely to happen. They went a different way, but they are talking about how allegedly there's going to be a 40K like army building app. They're just, I think, frankly, being really slow on building it. So it's too bad. I wish that they would be a little quicker on that. But the Age of Sigmar app, I think, is pretty good. I like it a lot. So I hope that they do eventually launch the app for 40K, because I think it'll help a lot. I would just like a decent army builder. I mean, I know they've added or are about to add a 40K army builder to the website, to Warhammer Community. It just uses power levels, though, so if you're one of those people that doesn't like power levels, it's not super useful. But yeah. Anyway, all right. I'm gonna go check on my 3D print, and I'm gonna say thank you again for coming to the show and checking it out, and you know, and saying hi, and looking at this image a couple of times, and me not able to show you my cursor on the screen, but you can see you got Ms. Brightshield there, and Steelheart sitting in the back there, and Skeleton Dude. And it was a fun International Tabletop day. Played a bunch of Shadespire. I'd never played a 4-player game before, so that was fun. If you get the chance, try to play some of the more than just 2-player games for Shadespire. 3 and 4 is actually a lot of fun. But yeah, that's pretty much it. So again, like I said, thanks again for the chat. Thanks for coming in and saying hi. And we will see you guys in 2 weeks here on the Every Other Sunday show. Have a good day and keep on hobbying. And thanks for watching.